and do one last little round of detail and adding a little more contour and depth to this portrait of Christian Bale, and then I'm going to start another one. And like I usually do, when I start the next one here in a little bit, I'll let people guess and see if they can tell who it is before I list it. And I'm pretty sure this is day 26 of drawing in a row, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So, about to close out a month worth of drawing every single day at the same time, which doesn't mean much to anyone but me, really. But we leave for some travel in a little over a week, and so the time that I'll be streaming will be different, but I'll still try to go live every day. And then for those drawings, there'll be a smaller format of what I'm doing right now. Basically just a miniature version of the exact drawing book and portfolio that I'm using. I know that you can only see a little bit of it, but these are large-scale leather portfolios, and then 150 GSM drawing books. And I use these, I'm a fan of the company, have been for a few years, but I use them mainly because they open in a gatefold, so they're completely flat when you draw on them, unlike a lot of other brands where you have to really crease the paper down. It's been kind of a weird day for me today, so I'm determined to enjoy drawing like I usually do. I feel like not just the noise, but sort of the lack of awareness that people have in this city is starting to wear on me a little bit. So I'm finding that I spend a lot more of my time drawing and sort of isolating away from the people that kind of ruin the city for everyone. San Francisco, when I first started coming here, used to be sort of like a little haven or a hotspot for artists and weirdos. And there used to be some semblance of a music scene here. And all the tech yuppies kind of ruined this place, both in culture, but also in the sort of general attitude that everyone carries around living here. And we live in a pretty cool neighborhood, but when I first started coming to this neighborhood, it was a lot more artists and photographers and poets and sort of old hippies and, you know, And now it's become the place where, to blend in, you have to wear a puffer vest and talk about hedge funds. And there's just kind of a general lack of awareness that everyone, mostly specifically in that crowd, has embraced, and it's really disheartening. So, the time I spend drawing is both an exercise in improving on the skills that I have and having a little bit more daily accountability for how often I spend on this, or how often I spend hours on this, as well as finding kind of a safe haven from the people that kind of ruin the vibe in the city. But what I mean when I say I've had a weird day, it's mostly just small interactions with people that have forgotten how to behave. I guess I don't know if it's a southern thing or not, since I'm from Texas, but I don't know, I feel like etiquette and manners are just part of who I am, and when people don't have them, I feel a little bit affronted. It makes me wonder, like, what that looks like in 15, 20 years. But as much as this has been kind of a historical city for a lot of different reasons, I feel like it's historically depressing how much the art culture and like the sort of weirdos have disappeared here, have been pushed out. Similar to Austin, except you still got a bunch of Texans around. I don't know. I think just a general lack of etiquette and decorum. But I try to run every day, and just for the sake of... Oh, hey Nolan, how's it going? Just talking a little bit about having a weird day in San Francisco. But I try to run at least 5-6 days a week, and my goal is to run at least a 10K every day. And I go to the same place, but I run on a treadmill for the sake of my knees, just to not blow them out too early. But someone that I know there made a joke about Forrest Gump because I have a huge beard and I run in like a baseball cap every day. And so, kind of to be funny, but also so I stop ruining all my good Astros hats, I got a Bubba Gump Shrimp Company hat, exactly like what Forrest Gump wears in the movie. And it's apparent to me now that everyone in the gym thinks I'm wearing a Make America Great hat, which, if I'm being honest, I don't really care. I don't get into politics and any of that, but a red hat is now like offensive to a lot of people. What I mean when I say I had a weird day, I caught a woman next to me on the treadmill trying to take my picture without me noticing. And it wasn't like I think she took my picture. I literally looked right at her and she apologized and then turned her treadmill off and basically scampered off. So that was a weird one. But I get a lot of people double taking to see what hat I'm wearing, which is kind of a sign of the times here in the city. It's like, you know, hopefully no one is a fan of the 49ers or Kansas City Chiefs or Arizona Cardinals or Coca-Cola or Nintendo. I mean, like, I could list many red hats that aren't what I think people think I was wearing. But that was just an odd moment. We're all in there trying to get healthy or stay healthy. And it's a weird thing because it's been kind of a trend in the last few weeks. I went out a few weeks ago, a little family dinner thing with some friends and family, and then afterwards went to a few local pubs and bars with one of my closest friends. And I'm born and raised in Texas, and so when I dress nice, I wear a Stetson dress hat. It's just kind of like what feels natural to me. And in North Beach, which is the sort of Italian heritage neighborhood here, no one looks twice because a lot of people wear nice fedoras, which are not to be confused with like a pork pie or a short brim Tommy Bahama hat, but an actual traditional fedora. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's literally what Indiana Jones is wearing. But my close friend and I both have dress hats. And also, it's worth mentioning, I'm bald, so I wear a hat all the time. Just have many, many hats. Hat connoisseur. But on trend with the lady trying to sneak a photo of my hat in the gym today. I'm not running in the Stetson, I'm running in it's a red Bubba Gump Shrimp Company hat. It's literally what Forrest Gump runs in for the entire running segment of that movie. Going back to that other night, we were in a bar that we both know the bartenders and have been there many times, and we walk in and they're playing 90s country, which is really kind of odd in San Francisco to hear that. And I get it to an extent. We became kind of a spectacle because we're both dressed as we do and then wearing boots, and it's just where I'm from. It's how I dress. But we caught two separate people from different groups trying to sneak photos of us that night as well. And it just kind of makes me miss the days of like consequences a little bit. I don't know, I always think of like when I was coming up in music and I was a younger guy. I played a lot of shows in the Fort Worth stockyards, and that kind of behavior earns you like a pretty heavy repercussion, like being not just rude but also like sneaking photos of people. It's become a very normal thing. And bear in mind, I say this as someone who's done street photography and things like that, but I'm one of the, I think, rare people that if I like how someone looks, I don't just steal the photo, I go and start a dialogue. I think a lot of that ability to have any sort of social etiquette or decorum has just completely fallen away. But it's one thing in a bar, everyone's drinking, people are pretty lit up, so I can understand how people might want to like text their friends something or whatever, whether it's in good fun or making fun of or whatever. I kind of understand that a little more, but it's a little different when I'm just running on a treadmill and someone's trying to sneak a photo. And then usually my wife would be kind of devil's advocate and say they might think I'm someone, which is flattering, but I know I don't really look like anyone that's like well known. I have a really big red beard and a lot of tattoos, so unless they think that I'm Jelly Roll minus 200 pounds or I don't know, Post Malone with no face tattoos, I'm kind of confused who they would think I am. But she said that to me before, and I feel like this was more of an occasion of people thinking I'm just wearing a hat that they were offended by. Makes me think of the thing that Hitchens used to say. When people would say they're offended, he would say, "I'm still waiting for you to make a point." Because he didn't care that they were offended. I feel like everyone could use a little dose of that energy. But I don't know. It's just an odd thing. I think maybe because I've traveled so much, I've just gotten to the point where I'm used to people having pretty, like, nasty behavior. And then I'm very accustomed to people finding out that I'm actually polite and, nice, more than just cordial and helpful. It's just how I was raised. So it's a little odd to kind of be on the receiving end of weirdness like that. But as per usual, this is me drawing and rambling, so welcome. Fix my playlist real quick. All right. But anyway, after that interaction at the gym, I was walking home and someone ran the stop sign and then basically sat in the crosswalk. And then their window was open and I was already in the crosswalk, and I just asked, should I climb over or go through your car? Like, what are you doing? Because I feel like I've gotten to the point where I have very little patience for people that either don't pay attention when they're driving, or they just assume that they're gonna ignore stop signs when it's a pedestrian neighborhood. And she just stared at me. And I felt maybe there's a language barrier, but then I started, like, I could hear her phone conversation that was on speakerphone and they're speaking English. So I just enunciated better. Just ask, can you move your car? Like, go ahead and go while I wait in the intersection for you, despite the fact that I was already like 10 feet into the intersection when you ran the stop sign. It's funny because we moved here to be in a place with more of a walking culture, and so far the amount of close calls that I've had with people not paying attention, both when I'm with my kid and when I'm walking alone, is pretty astonishing. But the amount of people that just don't pay attention when they're driving or walking is crazy. I've started doing this thing where if I'm walking on the sidewalk, because I don't walk around and look at my phone for a few reasons. Like, we live in a place with really cool scenery, so I kind of want to force myself to take it in, regardless of where I'm going. And I've literally witnessed people getting their phones and bags stolen right in front of me in the city. And I just prefer to not have to go through the hassle of losing anything. And what I do now is I don't move when people aren't paying attention. I just walk until they notice that I'm literally right in front of them. And it's always kind of funny because they act as if I'm the problem. So, well, you're looking down at your phone. Look up. You're literally walking down a sidewalk filled with people and you're not looking up, assuming everyone's going to move out of your way. I don't know, I feel like it's sort of an exercise in trying to reset a little bit so people pay attention to what's going on. It's all of my southern politeness leaving my body. I always wonder what's more important than walking around and, really, truly, in the side of town that we live in. I mean, if you're on many of the streets that are walking a certain direction, you can literally see the Golden Gate Bridge. If you're on the other side, you can see the Bay Bridge and Alcatraz and all this beautiful stuff, and people are walking around staring at their phones. It's just sort of comical how lost all of it is on people. But there's kind of a vibe here, going back to what I was talking about earlier, where people that I won't speculate as to whether or not they moved to San Francisco or they're like actually Bay Area, lifelong residents. And I don't mean that in like an immigration way. I mean that as like yuppies and people that move here to work in tech, wear like their puffer vests and talk on speakerphone everywhere in public. Um, I've had a bunch of run-ins where I'm just listening to an audiobook and walking to a park or walking to the Golden Gate Bridge, where people act as if I'm like homeless or scary. I had one couple with it's always kind of comical to me. They had what seemed to be a purebred Saint Bernard, and they're walking and they kept looking over their shoulder as if I was chasing them, and then the husband was like, "Excuse me, you can go ahead and go, like, just go around us." I had to take out my headphone to ask him what he was saying, but apparently I was offending them by just walking down the street in my neighborhood. And like, to an extent I understand that. I am big in stature, like I'm a tall guy, and I have a very long beard and tattoos, and I think like to some people that's like, I don't know, biker or scary or whatever they think. But I don't know, it's weird. It's not like I'm walking around unclean. I'm actually pretty OCD, like literally a neat freak, germaphobe. Yeah, it's kind of disheartening because when I first started coming to San Francisco, it was when I was playing in bands, and we would always build in extra time because it was just like it's a place where you could walk around and nobody stared at all the people that looked like us, and like everyone was kind of weird. And now it's kind of like yuppies and tourists, and I mean, lots of homeless, but like I said, it's not like I look even remotely homeless. And we've lived here for several years. I've never seen a homeless person listening to AirPods or, wearing like tidy clothes. No judgment on them. I mean, there's actually a lot of regulars around our building that I have like a ongoing dialogue with, like people that we know. And there's a lot of people that are just sort of like down on their luck that are paid to be caretakers at parks and stuff like that, and then they sleep in those parks at night. So I don't know, pretty plugged in our neighborhood, but the lack of social etiquette is just like wild to me. For Nolan and Rouge, since y'all are both in here, I'm assuming you're both still in here. I was just talking about how I had a weird time today at the gym. Someone tried to sneak taking a photo of me because I think they thought I was wearing a political hat. Which is funnier, like, knowing what I was actually wearing. I'm wearing a Forrest Gump hat because I run, like, marathon training every day, and I have a giant beard. I just thought it was a funny hat, But regardless of what people care about in terms of that, like, political stuff, it's just, like, the fact that people are so annoyed or up in arms over a red hat. It's wild to me. There was a podcast that I was listening to recently that, if I'm being totally honest, I don't like the guy who's doing the podcast, which y'all can figure out who I'm talking about if you just Google it. But Thomas Lennon was on it, and he's Officer Dangle, or if people are like film heads like me, they'd know he's the guy who, or one of the guys who wrote like all the screenplays for Night at the Museum and a bunch of silly movies. And he had this whole thing, he talked about how there's a whole generation of people that have grown up without someone like smacking them in the back of the head saying, knock it off. And it's something I relate with. I feel like it's kind of like the loss of being able to like get on a bike and ride around the neighborhood. All the adults in that neighborhood kind of policed behavior a little bit. But I don't know, a lot of it's not speculation. I've mentioned the store that I used to work in a few times. It's where I really got into a lot of the styles of drawing and the equipment that I use and all the stuff I was showing the other day, like the lighter and the knives and the pens and stuff like that. And it's in a very affluent neighborhood, and it's less than a mile away from like what in San Francisco they call Billionaires Row. And the amount of times people treated me like absolute garbage in there, because technically it's retail, but it's really more of a boutique, and people would talk to me like I was a servant, and it was always really off-putting. But it's a lot of that crowd, so it's not like a speculative thing, it's a lived experience, because I worked there for over 2 years. And it really worked in both, like around 3 different locations. One that was in the Mission, and that was like kind of a younger, cooler, I don't know, like more my crowd, like a lot of weirdos and tattooed people and artists, and you get the occasional tourists in there, and you get a very different vibe there. But even then, you'd still get the people that, I don't know, I associate them with like the gentrifiers. Not that I'm totally opposed to that. I mean, I lived in Austin for 20 years, so I've seen the good and bad of that. I mean, we lived on the east side where they fully gentrified, and like, we're pretty opposed to a lot of those businesses being pushed out. But San Francisco, it's different because they've just skyrocketed rent again, so it's makes it pretty apparent what's going on with a lot of that business. But you can always kind of tell when you're around those folks who are like anti-rent control and all that, you know. Same people that are shocked that we're raising a kid in the city. Like the type of people that have like multiple homes in the Bay Area. Just can't really relate. So obviously all those opinions aren't formed on the weird interaction I had today, but more so about just kind of like the general lack of etiquette and social decorum that people have here. I'm sure it's everywhere in a little bit, or a little, like, in little ways, but I will say, like, recently we were traveling, which is a new thing to us, really. Like, I traveled for a living with bands, but I was working. As cool as that sounds, it is work, you know. And it's pretty grueling, so you have like really few and far between moments where you can just take in the sights and things like that. But my family and I were traveling, and the worst people that we encountered were all American tourists. I mean, just the rudest people, presumptuous. They just assume everyone speaks English. They made no attempts, and it was like a few weeks that we were there, so it wasn't just like one or two interactions. We saw it over and over. And we frequented a lot of the places that we liked, and so we kind of made friends and acquaintances and would ask them outright questions about that. What do they consider to be rude or polite? And a lot of the time they just kept talking about how a lot of people don't make the effort to even greet or thank people in their own language. But when we asked people, it was like immediately, oh, Americans, yeah, Americans. But then they were always like very cautious, like, but you're very polite. We're over apologizers in my family. Say thank you a lot. Can't really count the amount of times that we were saying thank you in Italian. But also just volume-wise, that's another thing that's such a stark difference when you go to a place like that. You can hear the Americans everywhere because they like yell to have conversations, and man, I wish they would shut up. Especially like in these really beautiful places. There was one place I still think about all the time, which hopefully we'll get to go back. But the view just overlooks this really sort of historic area and looks out over the water, and it's a really cool looking place. And it's kind of spoiled by a lot of the American tourists who are yelling about, I mean, I remember the conversations because it was hard to have our conversation next to theirs. They're just yelling about like rent prices and how to like the best ways to be landlords. It's like, did you come on vacation to talk about that? It's weird. I don't know. I kind of don't shy away from judgment of that kind of stuff. So often as I get unsolicited judgment, I feel like, whatever. I'm allowed to have my opinions. I mentioned this the other day, how there's a meme that I've seen a lot where it's people who appreciate art and go to galleries versus the people who make the art. And it's like two yuppie guys with white wine and then a homeless guy in the background as the artist. Especially in San Francisco, that is very much the reality. Hi, Sona. How's it going? Actually, earlier I just got invited to a thing at the Leica Gallery, and as much as I've kind of trashed the gallery world this week, I thought it was kind of funny. They're just like, they don't feel like galleries here. It's like more of a sales opportunity. It's very little to do with, thank you. It's a lot less to do with like the quality of the art in those galleries and more about them making sales. Just a lot of disheartening stuff. Where am I from? I'm from Texas, but I live in California now. For now, I should say. I feel like after the last few months, I'm ready for a move. You said for me it's so difficult to draw. I think, I mean, I agree, it's difficult to draw. I think it's about just trusting the process and being forgiving, I like to think of it as just pencil and paper. You know, you can always erase and start over. If you, I'm almost done with this one. If you stick around or come back, I'm going to start another portrait, and you'll see how I start these, and they start really rough. And then I just slowly shape them into how they turn out. And it's kind of an exercise in just trusting the process, not giving up, you know. There's like little exercises if you treat it like anything else, you know, little practice drawings. Like I literally do warm-up drawings before I do anything on big pieces. But a lot of why I do the live drawings is just to kind of have like a little more personal accountability with drawing on a daily basis, because I draw every day, but I want to put in more time. I've been averaging 2 or 3 hours a day on these. Thank you. Now this is it's a series that I've been working on. I've done Christian Bale, Joaquin Phoenix, Josh Brolin, Johnny Depp, and Brad Pitt so far. And then I've got a few I'm thinking of doing that I'll start here in a minute when I finish this one. Just need to kind of fill in some of his beard and put in a little bit more depth in his eyes and kind of even some of the texture out. This so far has been the fastest one I've drawn in the series. Just wanted to make sure that I went back and shaped it up a little bit better. But yeah, to your point about drawing being hard, for years and years I would doodle and trace and do different types of drawing. And I always wished I could just draw from looking at something, and just started practicing that on a daily basis a few years ago. And now I'm at the point where I can confidently look at something and translate that to a blank page. But there's piles of failure behind all the achievements. I'm gonna scoot my chair up a little bit. Hi, how's it going? Oh, thanks. I mean, it's just time and discipline is all it is. You know, you should see where my drawing started. It was pretty awful. I think a lot of it is, you know, like cheesy or cliche as it is to say, it's really just about telling yourself that you can do it and then just working towards that. There's a lot of studies in that as well about building positive neural pathways. So if you are positive and reassuring about something, eventually your mind is more susceptible to the reality of it. Is that, I don't want to mess up that name, Novak Dvorak? No, this is Christian Bale. But I'll look him up or look them up and see. Maybe that'd be a good portrait if it looks something like this. Yeah, so far right now I'm just working on a series of different actors' faces. Mainly just actors that I like. Because I was doing musician portraits earlier in the month and last month. Oh, cool. Thank you. Yeah, that's been an interesting thing, seeing people subscribe. Because I think today is the 26th day that I've drawn in a row at 5 p.m. my time. It's like in California. And then I've got, I think 9 more days of drawing every day at this time. And I'm going to do some traveling, but I'll still be going live every day. I also want people to feel like if they're getting into drawing, like I'm very happy to answer questions or give pointers. Eventually I'll do some tutorials. I've had a few people ask how I draw noses. Because I teach private lessons here in San Francisco, but it's kind of unfulfilling in terms of how often I get to teach. And so just going to translate a little bit of that, and half of the time when I'm drawing I'm just kind of rambling about whatever's going on now. So I feel like there's a little bit more interest in that. Yeah, patience is it's everything with drawing. Rushing, really, it's beneficial everywhere. In my my previous career, a lot of the people that were more successful were the patient ones. Usually impatience leads to all kinds of problems. When I was in school years ago, one of my teachers always said, haste makes waste. So rushing through stuff would always ruin things. Patience is like anything else. It's like training to lift weights or run or anything like that. It all just takes time, and it's like building muscle, you know? The more you do it, the better it gets. That's something, it took me a long time to learn that, but I don't know. I also reflect a lot. I'm big on, I guess, journaling, not in like a hippy dippy way, but more of like reflecting on things that have worked out or not worked out. And then I'll go back and read that later and think like, wow, actually I was pretty good at being patient through this, you know. Kind of goes along with that positive thinking that I was talking about. But when I started drawing more intentionally and making it a daily practice, I was doing urban architecture and things like that. And I couldn't really draw portraits the way I wanted to, and I had no patience for it. And then it got to the point where I really burned out on drawing city scenes and buildings and things on coffee tables, you know, and just took loads of failure to really get it down. You said you only have patience to sleep. That's a good thing. Sleep is good. It's the one thing that most people don't get enough of. It's something I struggle with because I tend to stay up late and then wake up early. But, you know, sleep is good. part's kind of the most boring part of the drawing, other than starting one. It's really just kind of building out the directional texture in his beard. It's sort of a blend of using a dull edge and more definitive lines. Do we need different pencils to draw? Not really. These were gifted to me, so I've been using them for this whole series. These are Blackwings. They're insanely expensive, and they are as expensive as they are disappointing, is the best way to put it. I like them, but honestly, I could do the exact same thing with a store-bought, like, you know, #2 pencil. I was telling someone the other day that when I travel, because I used to travel for a living, and anytime I found like a hotel pen or pencil, I would take it, as well as like hotel paper. I have stacks of little hotel notebooks, and I draw with those, and most of the time they are the cheapest ones that they can get because they just want their name printed on them. And some of my favorite drawings have been done with those, but these were a Christmas gift. So I have this is the Frank Lloyd Wright series. It's the Blackwing 71s, and I do like Blackwings. They're cool. I like that it's a refillable eraser, but honestly, that's such a pointless feature, because if you are drawing with any kind of sharp edge on these, you never get through even one eraser. And I think even if someone was writing, they'd have to be writing with a dull pencil that's never sharpened to get through even half of one of these erasers, because these things you can pull out. So like, I would never use that. So eventually these will just be piles of erasers that I use for mechanical pencils. But to your point, I use Pentel graph gears a lot as well, mainly because if I'm traveling, I can put it in a bag and the nib itself recedes, so it won't break in a bag. See, you said in the market there are so many options, it's difficult to choose which one will be best for drawing as a beginner. I would say go with, if you can find just like a basic, like this one is listed, I don't know if you can see it, it's really firmly, or really lightly etched, and it says extra firm. I would go with a medium or an extra firm if you're looking for that kind of stuff. But to be honest, it's really just kind of about having a, you know, sharpener, eraser, and any kind of pencil, because I could do the same drawing with a dollar bin pencil. These are just kind of for people that want like specific types of drawing tools and things like that. But I mentioned it earlier, I used to work at a place that sold, you know, custom pens and really nice notebooks and things like that. And I would spend parts of my paycheck every time I got paid on that type of stuff. And I've been out of that job for a year, and I've kind of defaulted back to using like the most basic stuff other than these, because they were a gift for Christmas last year. I think it's really more so just about putting in the time drawing with whatever you have. Like a lot of my drawings I do with cheap ballpoint pens or mechanical pencils. Yeah, of course. I'm always happy to help with that kind of stuff, especially because it can be overwhelming to really choose that type of stuff if you don't know what all of them are. But I'd say just get whatever you can afford, and you know, even if that's like cheap pencils and pens, is, you know, it's more so about putting in the time, and then eventually you'll find what you like. Hey, Travis. Yeah, Sona, let me know. Keep me posted. I'm live just about every day right now. I've been going live for 26 days in a row, but let me know how it goes. I said it earlier. Other than starting the portraits, this is kind of the most boring part, is building out the facial hair and stuff like that. But I'm right at the end of this drawing, so if you stick around, you'll get to see me start another one. Cool. Thank you, Sona. Yeah, I'm always like it when people start drawing. I like to see the progress and all that. It's kind of why I teach lessons. Does anybody have any favorite Christian Bale movies? Just had a little whistle there. Christian Bale. No one said the reason you left the stream is because you found out you're getting ducks. Is that a typo or actual ducks? More birds. This is it's become the bird live stream. 11 people are watching. Oh yeah, Batman. Yeah, they're good. I mean, it's Christopher Nolan. I feel like it's hard to go wrong with all of them. I'm a big proponent of that, and I grew up on Keaton. I loved the first Keaton Batman, but Nolan. I mean, Bale is kind of my Batman. I'm always a little bit sad when I hear there's going to be another one, because I feel like those were really, really excellent. Speaking of birds, anybody old enough to have seen Duckman? Used to be like late night TV cartoon. I'm pretty sure it was pretty inappropriate. Yeah, if you think about like the Nolan Batman, it's the most complete of the Batman movies. Like I always, people laugh when I say this, but when it comes to trilogies, there's not very many of them that totally stand up and are consistent. Kind of like what I think Travis, you and I were talking about this yesterday with like Predator and Alien and all those, how there's some duds in the batch. I think a lot of people didn't love the third one, mainly because of the length of it, but they had to completely retool the thing because Heath Ledger passed away. So I kind of get that. I like the third one, I mean, it covered a lot of the bases of the stuff that I like in the Batman lore. But, I mean, how many really, like, not just quality, but, like, the way it's filmed, the acting, the casting. I mean, I know there was the casting change with Katie Holmes and Maggie Gyllenhaal, which I feel like Maggie Gyllenhaal is the better actor, so I didn't mind that at all. How many trilogies can you really say all stand up? Like, even the original Star Wars. New Hope is great, Empire's the best, Jedi's pretty decent. But did we need Ewoks and drumming on the Stormtroopers' helmets? Probably not, you know? It might have been cooler to see Kashyyyk and all the Wookiee planet, but yeah, it's like, it's just one of those things. Oh yeah, we're talking kind of about birds, Rouge, so it's very, very much bird talk. We're also talking favorite Nolan movies, or not Nolan, Christian Bale, and Batman came up. But like, how many solid trilogies can you think of? Another good example, even though the third one is really silly, they're all really silly, is Back to the Future. They have standards that they never break. They're consistently silly. The jokes all land the same in every one. And in the third one, they kind of make a nod to that, where Marty and Doc switch their jokes, where Doc says, "That's heavy," after he corrects Marty a bunch in the first two about saying heavy. What is this with mass? Is everything whatever in the future? Lord of the Rings, you know, another consistent trilogy. You know, the Eagles and that, so there's more birds. You know, some people hated the Hobbit trilogy. I thought they were all right. They're closer to the books than the Lord of the Rings was. Not quite as cinematic because they shot it heavily digitally, but there's not a ton of really consistent trilogies, and the Nolan Batman ones are, if anything, consistent. Oh yeah, this is like the original crew. No worries, Sona. Nice talking with you. I can't, it looks like somebody's fallen asleep on their keyboard here. I can't really tell what that is. Matrix trilogy. Although I do think, like, first one's the best. Second one is pretty great. Third one, there are parts that fall off for me. It's kind of, like, a good example is, thanks, Sona. Let me know how the art goes. The third Matrix has a similar thing that I think went wrong with Man of Steel, where there's the computer-generated battles, where it gets to the point where it feels a bit like you're watching a video game. Kind of loses the impact. I don't know. I also think, like, the mystery in the first one wasn't held up, because now you see what the real world is, and like they're in the caves with like the cave rave party and stuff. Not knocking it, but it didn't feel as like cohesive as some of those other trilogies, you know what I mean? I can't tell if that's trolling or not, but if it is, try typing with both hands. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, Matrix, those are good. I mean, I think it's like, let's see, whatever. I'm just gonna keep drawing. Yeah, Matrix, that's a good example. I mean, I hate to say this, but they might actually be more consistent than the original Star Wars trilogy. You know, film quality. And not that it's Hamill's fault or anything, but he looks so different between the first and second movies that even as a kid, I remember being thrown by that. Here, I'll just... I don't think Sona was a bot. She was talking about learning art, but maybe it's just a sophisticated bot. Anyway, I say we just push through. I don't want to get too derailed. Trying to think of any other like really solid trilogies. Yeah, I'm going to start that pretty soon. I don't want to overwork this one too much. There's some contrast I'm going to be adding in some of these parts, especially since this one came together so quickly. I just kind of want to get through like this next little chunk here. But also the photo I'm basing this on is the least high detail one. So it's a little softer, which always translates into the drawing. Not that they're good, but they are consistent. The Hunger Games trilogies are all kind of the same quality, like medium, decent. You know, none of them are great, but none of them are terrible. But they're like, it's, I don't know, medium decent I think is like the appropriate thing. Consistent though. I guess that's 4 movies, and I can't really remember. Those kind of went in and out of my brain. I can think of another one that it probably deserves more appreciation than it got, which is the new Star Trek. I have a bunch to say about like that. Yeah, okay. So you like the Hunger Games? I didn't. I think the books were a little like I was a little too old when they came out, so I was kind of lost on that. But first movie is the best. Second movie's pretty good. Then they kind of lost me a little bit, but to my point, they're all consistent. They're like none of them are starkly worse than the other in terms of the films. But with the new Star Trek, I was always a big proponent of J.J. Abrams. I also love that he took a meeting with George Lucas because he wanted to be like basically in charge of the, not the reboot, but sort of the new Star Wars. And Lucas told him that if anyone did new Star Wars, it would be him. And then less than 10 years later, he sold it to Disney. And Abrams ended up taking a part in it anyway. But that's one of the reasons he took on Star Trek, is because he wanted to like have those properties handled appropriately instead of going like full Disney. And I, as much as I love Star Wars, and I was way more into Star Wars as a kid, I also love Star Trek, especially the original series and Next Generation. That new trilogy was actually, I think, better than people give it credit for. I mean, I love Simon Pegg, and he wrote the third one, or co-wrote it. And something that I think is funny is that in his early writing, I think it was In Spaced, which is one of his like first shows that he wrote. It's where he and Edgar Wright all started, and like that whole crew, Nick Frost and everyone started together. And one of the jokes that they wrote in there is how much they hated the Phantom Menace and the Star Wars reboots or prequels. And then they're talking about films and like the standards, and he says just like how every odd number Star Trek is garbage, and then he ended up 20 years later writing one of the odd numbers, and it's one of the ones that got least positively reviewed. So he kind of fulfilled his own joke. But going back and watching that all together, that trilogy, they actually hold up. Like as a trilogy, they're really consistent. The casting is all great. Everyone is doing a good version of the characters without doing a parody or a complete imitation. But yeah, I think that's another underrated trilogy. All good. Yeah, I'll be drawing for a while. But I think in terms of like consistency in trilogies, factoring in cinematography, the quality in it, like a good example of the opposite of what I'm talking about would be like the Harry Potter movies. The first two were directed and produced by Christopher Columbus, or Chris Columbus, not the explorer, but the guy who made Home Alone. And he made children's films, so he made the first two as children's films because of the demo, like the demographic. And the cast, I mean, they were very much kids' books and films. But then they had wildly different directors for each one. And then each director would kind of insist on different things, and it's where they kind of break standards, and then the casting changes on many people. The inconsistency kind of doesn't hold up, or it doesn't, like the consistency doesn't hold up, I should say. So I think it's like it's a rarity when you get things where, like The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings, although they left out some like major portions, like there's no Tom Bombadil, there's, you know, all kinds of things that didn't fully exist or happen in the books but were necessary to tell the story in that way. Same cast, same stunt crew, same cinematographer. Like everyone really stayed consistent, and it helps that they did it all at one time. Same with The Hobbit. Half of the guys who were stunt crew on Lord of the Rings were actually hobbits, so it was very much like all in the family. And then their second unit director is Andy Serkis, so you know that it's going to be in line with what he and Peter Jackson did originally. Oh, cool. But I think like it's a rare thing that you have that type of a production. Like sort of like what Travis was saying earlier is that he likes the Matrix trilogy, and those they carry on that way as well. Same production quality in all of them, same casting for the most part. The Oracle changes, which always bugged me. It's an easy writing fix, I mean, because it's different programming, but there's just something about a series that is able to do something consistently, both with quality and casting, you know. But I think like a good example of the opposite, like going back to the Harry Potter things, they didn't even have the same composer for the score on a lot of them, which in some ways is good. I mean, I wouldn't imagine John Williams would rewrite a new thing each time. Like he made the overture and all that, but then you had Alexander Desplat and other people getting involved, so it just ranges in style. Oh, nice. Yeah, this all started because we were talking about Christian Bale movies that people like, and Travis said Batman. I was saying that that's one of the most consistent trilogies that they've ever made. I think in general also people just usually get like up in arms or defensive when they're like, well, Star Wars is the best trilogy, but Jedi is an inferior movie compared to Empire and A New Hope. And pretty much every Star Wars thing since then has been really inconsistent. So that's something I could also talk about at length. I think, honestly, and it's something that everyone, if you're really a Star Wars fan, you should go back and watch. Solo is one of the better ones. Rogue One is one of the better ones. Solo is a good movie as its own thing. Um, and I could defend that in detail, not just in production, but also casting and the whole idea of it. It's not meant to be the Solo that we know. It's the young, hopeful version of him. I know that like had like director issues, and Ron Howard stepped in, and they refilmed all kinds of stuff. If I had one gripe, I'd think that Val should have stuck around longer in the film so people felt anything when she goes toast on the bridge. I'm just trying to catch up and see what I'm missing here. I think y'all are talking about your mom jokes. That's I don't know if there's any mommies that are watching, but Your Mom's House, that's basically where that joke came from for that podcast title. It's Tom Segura and Christina P's podcast. Basically, they thought it'd be funny if people were saying like, where do you do the podcast or whatever, and it's Your Mom's House. So that's I'm an old school fan of theirs. I've seen Segura a couple times. Nolan, are you saying you didn't know that about Segura's podcast? Oh, okay, yeah. I could tell you all kinds of funny stuff about them. It was part of that. The other funny thing is that they were making fun of people getting back into wearing mom jeans, like high-waisted, like front butt jeans. And so, as a joke, they would call each other mommy jeans. Like, don't forget your mommy jeans. And then they had, I think, an electrician or a plumber at their house one day. And they had been calling each other that for so long. And this is after they had started Your Mom's House, because they just thought that was also like funny for it to all be like mom central. They had a guy working on something at their house, and they'd called each other versions of that for so long that as like an affectionate nickname, they call each other Jeans. Like instead of mommy jeans, they would just say jeans. And I think the electrician thought her name was Jean, so he kept calling her Jean, and they were trying not to laugh because it was like such an inside joke that they didn't realize how weird it sounded. And then for a long time, the main saying of that show was "keep them high and tight." It was like saying like a cool way or a funny way of saying like "stay cool," talking about like high and tight mom jeans. I retain a lot of stuff. I mean, literally from podcasts to actual history. Um, I mean, there's many subjects. If anyone prompts me, I can. It may not be directly about that, but I'm good at rambling and retaining. Can't do Wingstop. I don't know that one. I think I was saying this the other day. The last time I had Wingstop was so long ago. To be fair, where I come from, I think Buffalo Wild Wings is probably the more popular franchise. Which I think is like sacrilege in some places. I'm good with like movie trivia, band histories, actual like world and I mean U.S. history for sure, but more of the boring stuff. I think also a lot of it is where I live now and before, because I was in Austin before I lived in San Francisco. So like proximity to stuff like that is tough. So I think you'd have to go to South San Francisco or Oakland. And then in Austin, there's so many like artisanal wings and barbecue joints and stuff like that. A lot of chicken and waffle places. I'll show that. It keeps flagging you, Nolan, I think. I think earlier when that other person was talking, it was like trying to catch anything that was combative. Yeah, it's weird what it catches and what it doesn't. Because, like, I'm not bothered by any of that, but then I've literally had people in here telling me, give up, this is a waste, you suck. It's like, well, didn't catch any of those, that's odd, you know? It's funny how unintuitive a lot of it is. But I think it's based on like more of stuff that I don't really care about, like what they think is offensive. I'm not so easily offended. I wish that you could set it for preferences like that, like your personal, like do a questionnaire of what's offensive to me. Yeah, I've done that a little bit, here and there. There were a couple people that, like, I knew some of my family was watching also, and so like, depending on who exactly is watching the time, like they might have their kids and stuff, and so I was like blocking some stuff that was like it's not like my feelings are hurt, but it's stuff I don't necessarily want like some of them to read, you know. Um, and so like I had to go in and like stop the feed and like block and stuff. It was one of the first ones that I caught when they were trolling and saying like some pretty harsh stuff, and I guess I don't know if it's taking the bait or whatever, but I was explaining like people from my generation are more like experienced in the real world, so like I started kind of positive trolling back, telling them like, I hope your life gets better. It must be awful to be like so like deeply insecure that you have to go around and trash people on live feeds, you know. And then I told them like I hoped their life got better, and so they kept saying that they were going to report me for cyberbullying, which is funny. Same person that told me I should give up. I don't know, I think because I'm like I actually draw out in the real world, you know. Like I go sit at cafes and stuff like that. I tend to have not the happiest looking resting face. I look pretty pissed all the time. So nobody really says much to me in real life unless I sort of welcome it. So it's funny, like at a distance, people not seeing my face, just hearing me talk and looking at what I'm doing, you know, just doing kind of like the drive-by trolling. It's kind of funny to me. I don't know, the concept of trolling is just sort of lost on me. So you just want to get a reaction. Wouldn't it be easier to get like positive endorphins? Like being nice is less effort. But I don't know. I looked up a bunch of like psychology about it as well. A lot of it has to do with not having control over anything in their life. It's kind of sad. But it was, I mean, at this point, a couple weeks ago, a few weeks ago, it's like right at the beginning of when I started doing this. Because today is day 26 of live streaming at 5. Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to catch up. Yeah, I'm kind of the same, Rouge. Like, I just look pissed all the time. I always have. I mean, most people, I didn't realize that for a long time. I couldn't figure out why people thought I was mad. It's like, this is my face. Like, I don't know, I'm monotone. Me mad is two things. It's either very loud or very quiet. There's not really a medium setting. How long was I in the music scene? So I started playing. So my brother's 4 years older, and all his bandmates were 6 years older than me. So I was by far the youngest. My first shows, I mean, the long answer, the sort of actual honest answer, my first paid show, I was in 5th grade because I was playing drums for my brother's band. And then I kind of was in bands all through high school and was like the only kid in my friend group that I had like kind of a unique setup. My dad is a musician and kind of like, I tried to figure out how to describe him accurately the other day. Not a hippie, like kind of a Texas hippie. Like, not quite a redneck, not a redneck, but a musician. And he always had like sort of a little studio set up. And when I lived with him in high school, I lived next door to him and like his uh, stepkids and wife. And I basically had a studio in my home in high school. So I like in that era, I started, you know, recording everything, like whether it was my music or the band I was playing with or whatever. And then that became something that I sort of offered for people. They could come over and record at my house. And that started when I was like 14 or 15. And then I got into a band. It's actually really weird, but um, I was friends with a guy who I would play guitar with because I started on guitar and then went to drums. But we'd play, like, he was in drumline with me in high school. And he told me one day that he got into a band and that I should check him out. And he asked me if I had ever heard of Pantera. And I was more of like a classic rock, sort of Zeppelin, Hendrix head. Like, I was way into all that and like sort of softer, like Nick Drake type stuff. And of course, like, I listened to everything that was popular in that era as well, like when I was in high school. And it turns out that he was in a band with Dimebag Darrell and Vinnie Paul's cousins, um, who provided all the gear for them. And he was asking me because it's a very like high school problem, but their drummer got mono, and they wanted me to